Over the past week, I've been taking my game from around 100 and something FPS, and around 70, 80 FPS, depending on the random generation in-game, to a cozy over 200 FPS. And in combat, you can see here, we're rendering around the, still around the same 180, 200 mark. And even if I go somewhere else, we'll still be pretty good. And this is with OBS running. We can see here, we're pretty much near the 200 FPS mark. It'll go down to like 170, 160, depending on what's going on. But nevertheless, it is still considerably better, even in combat. And all of this is from some GPU optimization stuff that I've done for my game. And I want to share with you guys kind of the big stuff and the main things that I found, so you guys can take a look at it for your game and see if you can kind of do some of the same stuff to improve your performance. Now, some of the stuff I'm going to be showing you only work in certain situations. It's not a for everyone type thing, but other stuff kind of are, or at least something you should be aware of and decide to do consciously and deliberately. So let's get started with the first thing, which is kind of something you can all do pretty much in basically every project. This is in editor now. Right, I can get out of editor here. You can see this is in editor. So the frame rates and everything's going to be different, of course. But this is where we are at. If we take a look, GPU is pretty much the highest number here, right? That is the highest. We're around 90. And here's the thing. We're at 100% resolution of 2560 by 1440. Okay, so what's the problem here? The main problem here is the render resolution being at 100. Because if I just go ahead, press tilde, and type in ProfileGPU down here, and here with it open, we have the ProfileGPU. You can see here, this one frame took 12.4 milliseconds. We can double click on the milliseconds to sort it from highest to lowest, and we can take a look and open up what's going on. So in here, we can see, okay, there's the frame, there's a scene render graph, there's the actual scene. So that's 12.04. And now we can take a look at some stuff below. And okay, there's some stuff that's pretty expensive. Render deferred lighting in this case is at 5. Post-processing 294. Why is post-processing so high? Now I have a tuned material, but 294 is pretty high. If I open this up, the first thing you're going to see here is that 2.2 of it is temporal super resolution anti-aliasing quality 3 from current resolution to native resolution. Here's the thing though, these two numbers are the same, aren't they? By default, if you have TSR anti-aliasing enabled, not the upscaling, just the anti-aliasing, it will still try to do upscaling computations under the hood, and it will cost you a pretty penny. So even though I don't need specifically upscaling anti-aliasing technology in this case, because I'm running at native resolution, I'm paying over 2 milliseconds for that. For what? Well, I don't need it. In my game, I don't need it. I'm not doing upscaling here. This is a native resolution test, native performance test. I don't need it. I'm going to go to edit project settings, and I'm just going to search anti-aliasing. And here you can see anti-aliasing method for default and mobile. TSR. I'm going to be swapping both of them to TAA because that's all I need for my game. So that is the default. Also keep in mind that if you have an options menu, like I do if I go to my main menu level and press play here, and then go to the options, make sure the default here is also not to TSR. I'm going to put it back to TAA by default here. And then I'm just going to go and into the game, and we'll see where the frame rate will be. And all of a sudden, oh, that's a little bit better, isn't it? Huh. We're still at 100% resolution, but our frame rate is no longer on the 80-90 mark. And if I do, again, ProfileGPU and run that, we can look at that milliseconds in this case. It's going to fluctuate, so don't think of it, we drop like 4 ms. But the main thing here is, right, if I just, again, double click on this to sort it from high to low, I can even just type in TSR here, and you're just not going to get that. So now under the frame here, I can open this up. Open up scene, go to post-processing, and there's TAA at 0.13 milliseconds compared to 2.2 milliseconds? For anti-aliasing, I don't need it. If I was doing TSR upscaling, sure. But if you're looking at native resolution, probably don't need TSR upscaling specifically. Or like one that also does upscaling behind the scenes. Just turn it off, put it to something else. You don't have to use TAA. I'm not saying that's the go-to. Pick one that you like, take a look at the performance hit. In my case, I have it in the options, so you can choose TSR for yourself if you want, but it's no longer the default because it is visually not that big of a deal, and, well, that's a very expensive difference. And just to show you guys, I'm going to run ProfileGPU one more time, right? And now I have 8.55. This is just to show you that don't look at this kind of in one single frame. I can click inside of my game again, press Control Shift comma, and get another one. You can just get multiple tabs. So you can go ahead and just run this multiple times. So there we go. So now in this case, I'm around the 8.8, but either way, right, the TSR is gone. It is now replaced with TAA. If I go ahead and open this, right, and the TAA, no matter which one of these, is now at 0.13. So that is something you can do on pretty much every project. Now, the next stuff in this section will be a little more nuanced and not for everyone. We'll go back to the stuff that's going to be for absolutely everyone that you can do, but the stuff kind of that I want to talk about is stuff that I can do for my project that you might not necessarily be able to do for yours based on how your project is stylistically, I guess. Now, what am I talking about? Well, my game doesn't use Lumen. It is primarily a stylized kind of painterly toon look here, right? A lot of times these are called toon shaders, which is I'm saying toon, although it's meant to be more of a painterly effect. Because of that, I don't need Lumen. So I've disabled Lumen. I've also disabled Nanite. I've disabled Nanite because in this game, everything is pretty low res in terms of the geo, right? Even stuff like this, you can see it is pretty low res. Now, Nanite is freaking amazing, and I use it professionally at work. It's just not for this kind of project. And I can make a whole separate video on how to use Nanite, how to work with Nanite, and when and where to use Nanite. It's a whole thing. It is not a magic switch to be amazing, and it's also not a magic switch that makes things terrible. It's a tool. If you use it properly, you'll have great results. It is a way of having tens of billions of tries in your environment and not have single-digit FPS. It is not a place where you throw in low poly stuff or like lowish optimized stuff to begin with and throw on Nanite and have a good result. You can, but it has a minimum base cost. And in my case, the minimum base cost wasn't offsetting the actual benefit I was gaining, so I turned it off. Now, quick note that if you do disable Nanite, also go to your edit project settings and then search for Nanite here and turn off Nanite on the project level. So don't just disable Nanite on your assets, turn it off project level and you'll see a performance increase because again, it has a base cost. If your project is like AA, AAA kind of, more realistic style, you're probably going to want to keep both Lumen and Nanite on. Chances are it will make things better. In my case, for my style of my game, I have these off. But that's not where I just ended it. All right, I loaded it one more time. Let's go under duration. Let's go under frame. Let's take a look at something else. Here, under this, we can go under scene, right? Render deferred lighting is right now at 2. So we can open it up. We can take a look. Diffuse and indirect AO is pretty high. We can look in here. And then we see this. Screen Space Global Illumination, SSGI. Well, here's the thing. I just mentioned I turned off Lumen. I'm clearly not using global illumination. Again, stylistic environment. I don't really care much about global illumination. I can fake that myself. I don't need it to happen. So 0.91 is pretty expensive in this case. I could go ahead and, take a look at it somewhere else, just to see maybe, it's just in that one location. So here I am in the dungeon. Let's just run the actual profile, Control Shift comma. Okay. And we'll get back to this blue area shortly. And we can go ahead and just open up again, the same thing. Go under scene, render deferred lighting, diffuse and indirect, SSGI. Oh, there's another millisecond there. Oh, I've seen this higher. I've seen this like a 1.5, 1.9. It really depends on what you have kind of going on. But again, I don't need this. So what I can do is run a command called r.ssgi.quality space 0. If I run that, you'll see that the GI kind of went away, right? A lot of these parts got darker. I got less fill. If I come back here, this is what it looks like without it. And if I run again, SSGI quality 0, then I turn it off and you can see I get those darker areas. Now, this darker areas is because I'm using ambient occlusion. So that's why it's darker. And the difference here is a bigger one than you would see normally because I've already made compensations of working with it off. Because basically when you turn it off, right, you can make other compensations to kind of brighten up those areas or darken those areas however you'd like. I've already made those changes. So for me, it's kind of building on top of those. If you look back on the original footage, you'll see the difference isn't actually really noticeable. Yeah, there's a little bit of a difference, but the difference to me isn't really something that is, oh my god, this is making or breaking the entire look. It is something like, okay, if I want a little more, a little less fill, I can work around that myself. I don't need it to do its own thing. So I set the quality to 0, which effectively disables it. And now if I come here and run ProfileGPU one more time, we can just search for SSGI, and you'll just see it's just gone, right? We have disabled it. So now the entire SSGI section is just non-existent. So that 1-ish, 1 plus whatever milliseconds that it was, gone. And stylistically, right, I see no issues here. If I want to adjust the darkness here, I can just go to my skylight and modify the intensity scale of a skylight. And if I boost it to 2, you can see, well, there you go, right? This part gets filled in more, and I'm just using the skylight to fill in the stuff myself. If that's too much, I go 1.5. And now if I want it to be a little bit less, I can have it to be a little less. So I can control that combined with ambient occlusion to just get the look I want without needing it to do it through the GI here. Again, you probably want it if you're doing Lumen and doing AA, AAA visual style, right? It depends on your project, but just know it's there. You can disable it and gain yourself some performance. Because those two, the AA and this one, made a big difference, I will say. Now let's go back to things that everyone that is incorporating this thing can utilize in their project. What am I talking about? It's in-world widgets. What do I mean by in-world widgets? Well, if I come over here and we take a look, all of these enemies, right, have health bars above their heads. Okay, so what's the problem here, right? Well, if I just run the ProfileGPU, I'll just stop the game so I don't have to worry about it, but the ProfileGPU still stays. And I want to show this right here, world tick. Now, what is this 0.5 seconds of world tick? If I open it up, we have slate widget render, 0.02, 0.02, 0.03. If I just search slate, I can just filter it out. So I just see this. But you can see this is all the enemies, and every single enemy has a cost of 0.02, 0.03, or no, probably around 0.025. Oh, there's some 0.01s, right? It's around there. Every single one. Now you might be thinking, okay, well, let's just disable tick. And you can't asterisk. And I say can't asterisk is because when I was doing it and I disabled tick, it just wouldn't update. It wouldn't even draw itself up above anyone's head because it needs tick to be enabled to basically make any updates to what's happening in the world. And in my case, because at the time the game was running like at 150, 200 FPS, right? Updating on tick is really unnecessary, especially when I just update the value whenever I need to. Now, I went ahead and tried things like disabling tick, and then, okay, re-enable tick, update the value, redisable tick. Nope, didn't work. Nothing worked. Now, the funny thing about that, or the confusing thing about that, is I've done some stuff since then. Just now, I wanted to show you guys that it happens, and I disabled tick, and it's still updated, and everything was working fine. Basically, I ran set component tick enabled right after all of my stuff, and here I'm just printing out the whether it is enabled, right? If I go ahead and hit play here, it'll say false. Here it is all printing just false as it's loading a bunch of the enemies around. In the past, these health bars wouldn't even appear. If I come here, right here they are, they just wouldn't even appear. So I think the reason why they're appearing now is because I'm using a different system, which is using actor pooling for the enemies. So it seems like that actually works fine with the health bars. But before I set up actor pooling for the enemies, the health bar would not appear. So regardless, I have a workaround. If it does work for you on your setup, you can disable tick, it seems. But if, like me, disabling tick results in the health bars or the widget just not appearing at all, there is a workaround. And that is on your widget, assuming it's a component, you just need to scroll down to the user interface section and then go to redraw time. The time in between draws, if 0, we would redraw every frame. If 1, we would redraw every second. So what does this mean? It is basically how much time do you want at most to redraw it. So if I specify 0.1, at most, it will update once every 0.1 seconds, or 10 times a second. And it can do the same thing here on the component by just doing set redraw time at 0.1. So instead of running it on tick, it is running it at 0.1 seconds. So only updated 10 times a second instead of the 200-ish per enemy. And now if we go ahead and run around here, right, we go ahead and spawn some enemies. I'll go ahead and press Control Shift comma, do it again, and there we go. We got even a smaller one here, right, because it depends on what frame you do it. So I just did 3 here. So on the first one, we had world tick to be higher, but on these two, you could see world tick here. If I go ahead and click on it, 0.09. That's a lot better. And this one, right, 0.1, considerably better. 0.09, 0.1. And then right here, right, the first one we did was probably on a frame where they were still kind of doing the 0.1, right? Because every 0.1 seconds, you can see 0.46. So basically, we reduced the cost of them. And depending on what you're updating, like for me with health, 10 times a second, honestly, is just fine. It's fast enough that you don't feel like you're waiting for it to update, but also you don't need it to be so precise, like on that frame. If this was a competitive thing, maybe a little different. This is not a competitive thing, so I think it's fine. We could always reduce it to 0.05, right? You can force it to be a little bit faster. It's not going to go any faster than that. It doesn't mean that triggered 0.1 seconds and like trigger multiple times. No, that's just going to be the fastest it'll go, is once every 0.1 seconds. There you go. That should help out as well. The final thing that I want to show you guys is related to Niagara. I use Niagara for a bunch of abilities, and I have it pooled. So it just says auto release on the nodes. So that way it just tries to reuse it instead of spawning a brand new system every time. But I did get my Niagara systems from Fab. And depending on how those have been set up, they might have a slight issue. To see what I'm talking about, we turn on the Niagara debugger. So here, if I go to Tools, Debug, and then you really see Niagara debugger. By default, you'll probably just see this, and you'll have a window that pops up like this. Well, to get the information that we need, just go over here next to HUD, press the three little dots, and turn on Show Overview. And just move this out of the way. And what is this showing? Well, it's showing the current Niagara systems in your world, how many of them are active, their scalability settings, how many emitters are there. So if you see the same number, 3636, that means there's only one emitter in that system. If this number was bigger, that means there are more emitters in that one system. It depends, right, on kind of the effect that you're using. And it shows you how many particles right now are in the world and how much memory it's using. You'll see the total memory, total particles, right? All of this. So this is all cool. So what happens when I use mine? Well, I'll go ahead and use it. It goes here. There's the dash maga. Edit mode means I just have it open on the side as a tab. You can see the particles are now going down. It is now at 1 particle and 1 active. Well, that's odd. Why is that? Hold on, let me use it again. Now there's 2. Well, I just used it once. Okay, well, the particles are dying, and now it's 2 and 2. This is not going away. This is now in the world. Why is it in the world? What's going on here? Well, this is a particle system that I got from someone on Fab, as I mentioned. So now we're 3 and 3. And through searching and trying to figure out what was going on, I found out that, hey, it has this emitter that spawns an audio cue, but it never had a kill on it. So I added a kill particles. So if I re-enable it, kill particles and kill particles checked on the audio emitter in this case. Because in this scenario, the audio just never sent a signal that this is kind of done and dead. By just having the kill particles on particle update here now, I can go and replay. And by the way, you'll see a bunch at the start that will just disappear. That's just stuff that is kind of being loaded in. And then when it realizes, oh yeah, it doesn't need to, it just goes back to the memory instead of actually being in the world. It's just basically pulling the stuff for me. So if you have like hard references in places, that's where they would load, but they won't be actually in the world. But here we are again in the world, right? It has calmed down. We can see some effects from some enemies nearby. So let's go ahead and use this. And we see again, dash magma edit mode, dropping. Oh, it went to 0, 0, 0. It's gone. If I go ahead and use it again, dash magma 1, and the particles again are going down. And you'll see because this goes to 0, active goes to 0. And after a moment, it goes bye-bye. There it goes. And same thing with some other ones. Those are the ones from enemies that are spawning kind of, you can see this one is spawning this poison cloud here on the ground, and it is going ahead and updating what it sees in the world. The main thing here though is you can see how many are being spawned, right? So when you have things like this all being spawned at runtime, this allows you to see that, to make sure that 1, the effects that are supposed to be disappearing and dying off are indeed dying off, and 2, it allows you to see, are you maybe spawning something a bit too much? Because thanks to this, I was able to figure out that, hey, when my enemies were walking, because I wanted them to spawn actual kind of ground effects as they walk to kind of leave like a poison trail behind, I noticed, oh, it was spawning like constantly because I wasn't checking what the distance was between the last and the current location. So even if they were walking really slowly, basically at a really slow movement, it would just stack them so densely and I didn't notice that. I was just checking for speed. So that made things a little more optimal once I kind of used that information and adjusted my graphs accordingly. Yeah, this is just this little section here. There's a bunch more here, but I'll be honest, I'm not an expert on this stuff. The main thing I've been using is just this guy. It has been extremely helpful to have this, because there were some systems that had just like 20,000 particles, and when I looked at them, they didn't need 20,000 particles. So I just modified the particles to be fewer and increase the size of them to get the same effect without having a major difference. It's not a big change, but it does, it does add up. Every little thing kind of pulls a little lever here, a little lever there, and eventually it'll just start slowly ticking down lower and lower and lower. But those are the main things that I've done to actually improve performance. Now, I did mention that I also did some actor pooling. Honestly, that didn't make a big difference in performance. It was probably there, but again, it was probably more of a kind of a maybe single digits, but within the fluctuation, you don't really notice it. The big ones were kind of the screen space global illumination that I disabled, the anti-aliasing that I disabled, and the world tick were kind of the big ones, along with the Niagara. Those are the kind of the big ones that I kind of showed off today because they made the big differences. If I wasn't recording in-game in here at full 1440p, I would have 260 FPS in the package build, not an editor. Also, if you're wondering, I'm running a 4080, an NVIDIA 4080. That is my GPU, and that's what we've been kind of using for all the GPU optimization numbers. So base it off of that. Would I like it to be even more performant? Absolutely. At this point, I'm kind of hitting the, as much as I can for the time being, and this is a prototype. I'm not at the even, early production stage. There's really no reason for me to update the performance even more. I'm pretty satisfied with it for now. I'll probably revisit. Well, I'll definitely revisit it later down the line, but for now, I think we stay here. So hopefully this has been helpful for you guys. I genuinely enjoy doing stuff like this. I've done it a lot in the past, so I feel relatively comfortable, at least on the GPU optimization side. When it comes to the actual profiler for the CPU optimization stuff, that graph is far less intuitive, but I've slowly been getting better at it. Nevertheless, I want to give a big shout out to my Patreon supporters that help support everything I do. And if you're interested in joining the community, the link to the Discord and everything else is in the description below, as always. If you're curious about some other stuff about this game, maybe how I achieved this kind of visual look, maybe check out this previous devlog I made on it to find out how I used one texture to create the entire environment look.